Hey everybody, welcome to the Crit House. I'm Jeff Larson, and today we have a London-based photographer to look at and to review the work of Andre Lobao. Did I pronounce that right? I forgot to ask you at the beginning how to pronounce your name,
Yeah,
Andre.
yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
Well,
That's correct.
thank you. Andre is a self-taught street and documentary photographer. He shoots in black and white, and the project that we are going to look at today is called Lost Underneath. It is a project on the London Underground that was taken during the COVID period. Our reviewers today are Phil Penman, who is a legendary New York-based photographer. He was born in the UK. He is a Leica ambassador. Does it ever get tired to be called a legend?
I don't buy into it myself.
As I mentioned, he's a Leica ambassador, and he's been listed as one of the 52 most influential street photographers out there. And he has a book called Street, which is a bestseller. And also with us is Derek Fassbender. He is also a New York-based street photographer, and he is the host of the B&H event space, and he is a Fuji ambassador. So we have an esteemed crowd here with Fuji and Leica in the house. So welcome to all of you. So Andre, if you can tell us a little bit about your project and the work you're doing, and maybe a little bit about where you're trying to go with it, and then we will have a conversation about the work and maybe give you some feedback that will be helpful.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Hi.
Hi.
As Jeff said, I'm an amateur street photographer mostly, and this is my first attempt of trying to come up with a long-term, more documented oriented project that is based on the London underground during the pandemic times. So this is a project that I started about 2 years ago during a series of lockdowns and the confinement period, and it started kind of a to be honest, as an excuse to get out of the house and to have a purpose to be out there. And what started as a very informal and kind of circumstantial observational exercise of just recording my surroundings, it started it started growing into some deeper questions. I found myself, wrapped up in this idea that, we were living in a kind of dystopian reality on those in those times, and I was wondering how that was affecting the way that we behave to each other.
Andre, I think that's good information. We've been looking at the pictures as you've been talking about the project. Do you know what the final pieces? Are you looking to have this in are you magazine on the wall? Is it a book? Is it a zine? What's the end product here?
I'm working towards publishing, either through
Okay.
a small publisher, or just going for self-publishing in myself, and probably doing also an exhibition.
Super,
that would be
great.
That would be great.
Well, so why don't we have you set yourself on mute, and I'm going to ask Phil and Derek, who have, I think, a little expertise in this area of sort of street and documentary, to respond to what they're seeing. Who wants to start out? What are your first comments? What do you think?
Derek's itching to go.
I was going to defer to the home team over there, but super interesting. Number one, obviously, yes, because I'm a street photographer, but also because I was out there documenting 2020 and the experience as well. So it's natural to look at it and to compare it to my experience, to compare it to New York, to London, the two different cities. First, Andre, I just want to say you have a beautiful eye. Not even just in this project alone, but in looking at your body of work on your website. Really, really, really beautiful work. And what initially grabbed me about this series, other than just I like a cohesive aesthetic. It's something that I can never do, but when I see it done, I have such an appreciation for it, because it all has the same vibe, the same mood to it. And I think that's something that can't be stated enough when I look at projects and when I review people's projects, is that if they're discombobulated or disjointed in any way, it loses the viewer so easily. And I think everything here, there's just this melancholy, somber tone to all the images that plays into the black and white, to the moodiness, even just how everything is lit. I love that natural available light that you're getting in there and just working with it. It plays really well, especially the fact that we're talking about social distancing, but the use of wide angle lenses to get up close and personal during a period where we were not supposed to be up close and personal. I just think that's such an awesome dynamic, and it adds so much to it. A lot of people were pushed back and afraid to get up close to people during this time, and it's just beautiful work. I think overall, the project as a whole, the series of images, it grabs me and it kept my attention throughout.
Phil, what's your response? We get this is your
Yeah,
territory.
it has a nice look to it. Like Derek was just saying, it has a certain, a nice feeling about it. I like the fact that the editing is consistent as well. Sometimes you'll just see like editing all over the place, and you don't know if one picture was taken by a different photographer or not. So I like that. I think the only problem you're going to run into is if you are looking to do a book or a show with this. One, you're going to need a lot more material. We're talking, once you start doing books, you're getting into the hundreds, and you're whittling down from a few hundred.
So I will say in defense of that in terms of just the number of images that are here, that's a restriction of the show. I think Andre has more that's available.
So the other thing you're going to have to look into is like, how much depth is the story going to have? Like, these have a very similar look. Is the whole book going to feel that same theme, or are you going to break things down? Like, if we look at the picture, say, stay safe, leave a place, with the mask to the right of it, it'd be nice to see some more close-ups as well. Like, break it up a little bit. Maybe some wider shots as well. Maybe you throw in some of the emptiness of the subway. London subway is amazing to shoot. You've got like great symmetry, and you mix this in with that. This is a nice body of work for what we're seeing here. The only issue I see is when you start wanting to go gallery slash book, you're going to need a bit more depth to it. It has a nice look to it. Like Derek was saying, it's an interesting comparison to what we were seeing, and just to how amazingly clean your subways are. Ours certainly did not look like that.
Yeah, I do agree with what you said, Phil, about a sense of adding to it and variety, where when you do look at it, cohesiveness is good, repetition not necessarily as good. And I think if you're going to look towards putting a book together where you're looking through a lot of images, you want to engage people, you want to kind of keep them on their toes, and you want to keep some sense of not knowing what's coming, and you can be cohesive in doing that. And I think I guess I would challenge you, Andre, to, when you're putting together a project like this, sometimes you have to step outside of yourself and look and say, what, all these images look the same. You might have a group of 5 and say, well, I can pull one of them and they're all going to accomplish the same job. And this shot that you just had up, Jeff, just that detail shot there, look more in that sense, where these are perfect images that can add filler. When people are putting together bodies of work, you have some people who just feel like, okay, if I'm putting together 30 images, I'm just going to throw a random number on it. They just want 30 cover images. And it doesn't matter if they're telling a story. And it's no different than taking 5 Hall of Fame players and putting them on a team and thinking that it's going to be successful. You have to have role players in your body of work, and you have to have in between images that help tell the story, that connect one, I'm going to throw this term out, one banger to another. You can't just have all bangers. And I think really you have to ask yourself, what story am I telling? And then ask yourself again, no, really, what story are my images telling? When I look at these images, and if I look at them 5 years from now, 20 years from now, is it just, okay, I went and took some images in the subway system during a time where everybody was wearing masks? Or what really is the deeper story here? And I think sometimes you have to go outside yourself and look at details, and you have to work the scene and shoot wide and shoot, down detail oriented, and just look differently. Because I do think, as beautiful as it is, when we're talking project, photo book, you don't want just a well done, beautiful, cohesive book or project or group of images. You want something that really pushes the limits and provides a full experience.
So Phil and
Yeah.
Derek, can I ask a question real quickly? So I'm looking at the images and I'm seeing it feels like some of these are sort of snuck. And they might be better if the scene were worked. And I guess maybe I had a reaction to this one, which feels like sort of, I mean, the woman holding the phone sort of seems like she's engaged with it, but I don't know like what this photograph is about really. And if the scene had been worked a little bit more, and maybe he had come around and focused on her, and told the story a little bit better. And the same one with this one. I don't know like what's being told in this one, and there must be a way of coming to compose him better, to find out, to tell whatever his story is a little bit better. Phil, I mean, in terms of when you work the streets, how do you work the scene a little bit?
Yeah, you have to. I come from my background's slightly different. I come from press background, so the way we work is very different to like street. You're always having to give multiple angles of anything. So if we were to break this down as a story, if we go to number 12, okay, let's have a look at that. First thing that jumps out to me is the guy in the reflection is not wearing a mask. Okay, so it's like true to life. So maybe, it adds a good little detail that I notice. If you don't want to show that, then you're going to have to, move slightly to the right. Maybe you blur, come to the right of them, blur the background out a little bit. I kind of like that detail. If you look at number 15, please.
Yep.
So for me, when we look at what are the images that are going to be fascinating to me come 20 years from now, it's not necessarily going to be the people wearing masks, okay? Because we already have that in other countries where you've got the pop stars that will wear the mask. The picture to me is the sign on the window there. That's the stuff that's going to resonate with me. It's like there's going to be there's a thing on the floor that tells me, and I cannot stand within 6 feet of that other person. To me, that's more barbaric and weirder than someone with a picture of a mask. Those are the ones that I'm looking to see. That's what I think is going to tell you a story. Like it's going to last longer. Maintaining social distance, these kind of things, those little details, go through your work. And that, if you were to break this down for like a news article, they always want like a wide scene, establishing shot. Where am I? I'm at the London Underground. Here are the trains. So you go on top of the bridge, looking down at the subway, a wide shot. Then you would break down like smaller images, groupings of like the people. And then you would do your tighter shots where you would have like maybe a mask on the ground, maybe a close-up of a social distance. Like that's very nice. The one with the women with the two masks, that's probably one of the strongest ones. Granted, if you were slightly to the right, would have been great, but you've got to do candid. You probably sat there and if you moved over a few and you start pointing the camera, you're gonna look like you know what you're doing, right? So you would mix this shot in with some close-ups, with a wider shot, make it much more of a thing. And then when you're laying it out, like as an exhibit or in a book, you want the flow to be very dynamic. So it's like we're saying, it's not the same picture over and over again. It's like the eye is constantly looking around the page, looking for the next thing. So go through your work, and I'm guarantee you probably subconsciously shot a bunch of pictures that you didn't even think to put in.
I agree with all that. I was thinking the same thing about the signs, is that's probably one of the most interesting aspects of the entire pandemic period is the signs. And I know I was out shooting with Phil in the streets during the pandemic, and that was one thing that was like jumped out immediately. Whenever Phil saw a sign, and it was almost like that's where his eyes went to before anything else, was the signs. And great point, 20, 30 years from now, that's what is going to be super interesting, is really going to tell the story.
Yeah. I don't know if you had it in London where Derek, you remember we'd be like walking around Union Square and there'd be like a square box around like a table, okay, and there'd be like 4 chairs, and there would be another chair and table over here, and you'd have to put a square box around it because we're all too stupid, obviously, to realize oh, that's 6 feet. Those are the images to me that I looked at it back then and I'm like, what the hell? Like, we're that dumb that we have to be told how far 6 feet is on a grass lawn? Like, they have to draw a circle, you know?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's to me that I find that stuff more telling.
Totally. Well, especially because a lot of people, that was their go-to, was just masks, people in masks. And I remember I'm pretty sure we had this conversation, Phil, when we were out wandering the streets, is that, like you said, there were cultures that were wearing masks out in public and on public transit has been done for years and decades, and it's just more of like a health thing. So I think that when we talk about developing the idea of the project further, that's some of the direction you're looking at, is if you take in this project in particular, if you take masks away, what do the images say? So if you substitute out and say everyone that's wearing a mask is not wearing a mask, how strong is the image? And that's a great way, when that's your focus, look at it in that light. It's just changing your perspective will give you a whole new perspective on how powerful the project is.
Andre, what's your reaction to the discussion?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I think it's like Derek was saying, it gives a completely new insight in terms of direction. It's quite interesting having this view, just not only focus on the face masks themselves and more about the signage that probably it's more ephemeral and it won't stay.
Well, do you have a question? Let me give you one question before we wrap up to ask, and then we'll.
I'm not sure if this is a finished product in the terms of the storytelling, if it should have a counterpoint to it, or if it's pretty much work already done. I've been struggling with this question myself, and so I don't know.
The ever-ending "when does a project end" question.
Yes, pretty much.
Phil, when do you know that a project ends? And is this project ended? Does he still have more work to do?
Yeah, I would go look through your work, see what you have, look at the other stuff that you have. The story it's always ongoing, right? There's always a new thing that's coming along. Like, for us, it was like the homeless on the street. There was that angle. Then there was for us, it was the construction. crews, and then you've got everything slowly coming back to life now. So this project could carry on going for God knows how long. You've got the COVID testing on the streets. It's never really ending, this. But there has to be that shut-off point, and I think it's going through the work that you have and saying, right, do I have 30 really strong images for a show? Doing a book, I think you need much longer duration of time, because then you want to see the depth in the work. And I think that requires longer period of time to do that.
Derek, final thought?
I couldn't agree more with Phil. I think definitely needs a much deeper dive. And you might have been, it's kind of what Phil alluded to before, you might have been so narrowed in on one particular dynamic that you might have missed or overlooked some images throughout. So I would go back and pour through the rest of your images that you maybe didn't even give a second thought to, and not just look at the image as a whole, look to crop down, look to, any way to use particular images to work it into the fabric of this project and build out more, and keep shooting this. Go back in. I mean, we're still in the grips of a pandemic, somewhat, depending on where you are and what day of the week and what the weather is.
Hopefully not for too much longer.
Hopefully not for too much longer, but maybe it might develop into a bigger project from here, where you can use some of these images that roll into something different.
Thank you. All right, let's.
Sorry,
go ahead, Phil.
I'd be really fascinated, actually, because I'm going to be in London soon, and what would be interesting is now, because everything's kind of coming back to life, and most people were not wearing masks anyway over there when I was there. Interesting picture would be like a crowded subway scene and one person wearing a mask and everyone else isn't.
Yeah.
That might be an angle to look at as well.
All sorts of good information.
So,
Phil, thanks. We'll leave it at that. I want to thank you all for participating here on the Crit House. Today's reviewer is Phil Penman. We'll call him a legend. He can be seen at philpenman.com and on Instagram at Phil Penman as well. He is a Leica ambassador, and he is teaching workshops and working for the Leica Academy as well. Derek Fassbender is online at leicamachine.com, and he is available on Instagram also at Leica Machine. He is a Fujifilm ambassador, and he works with B&H Event Space. I really want to thank both of you for participating with us. I think it was a really good conversation. Hopefully, Andre, you found some good information out of the discussion. Would like to encourage everyone who's watching to post into the comments any thoughts that they have for Andre, to get information and your thoughts about what he could do with his work and what direction he could go. Andre, thank you so much for being here with us today. This is the Crit House. If you're interested in participating in the Crit House, you can do that by reaching us at thecrithouse.com. There is a page there on thecrithouse.com where you can register to be a photographer and have your photography reviewed. And we certainly hope that you will join us in that. Thank you all for joining us here today on the Crit House, a photography review.